The world is increasingly wary of Huawei, a company with an unclear relationship with the Chinese state. A company that wants to literally be plugged in to the most important parts of our telecommunications.
We have to stand up and defend our values well. And if we have an open society, and we do, and we need to protect that open society in this new age of artificial intelligence and big data, we have to be firm and resolute in protecting that open society. And one of the ways that we do that is by saying to China, you cannot use your companies as fronts for espionage and advanced cyber espionage in the West.
Huawei is a huge player in 5G. That's the next generation of mobile phone networks. It's a technology that's going to connect more or less every device and system in the not too distant future.
Security becomes infinitely more, a bigger scale and more important to the running of daily life. So that's why people are now getting very exercised about 5G.
The UK's key intelligence alliance is known as the Five Eyes. Three of its members, the US, Australia and New Zealand, have in effect banned Huawei from helping to build their 5G networks. The UK and Canada are under pressure to follow. The head of the UK's Secret Intelligence Service, MI6, Alex Younger, said in December, "We need to decide the extent to which we're going to be comfortable with Chinese ownership of these technologies and these platforms in an environment where some of our allies have taken a quite definite position." Huawei was founded in 1987 by Ren Zhengfei, a former Chinese military engineer. He's always denied working for or with the Chinese state. But in Chinese business, relationships are not always clear-cut.
National intelligence law was passed in China last year, which requires citizens and corporations to participate in the gathering and dissemination of information for the government, if the government should so require. The management of the company may or may not be members of the Communist Party, but actually they know which side their bread is buttered on. They have very close relationships with the political masters.
The warnings about Huawei and other Chinese tech companies go back a decade, but over the same period, ministers have been keen on courting Beijing and their investment.
What I wanted to say to China is that Britain is open to investment and jobs being created in Britain by Chinese companies, but I've also wanted to say something to people back in Britain, which is that China is fast changing, and in a company like this, Huawei, you're literally seeing the future being built.
But looking back, was this all a bit too cosy?
I think with the use of hindsight, I think government was dazzled by Russian and Chinese money, and I now think that looks extraordinarily naive.
Should we have addressed the threats earlier, do you think?
Yes, of course we should have done.
However, the security minister in that government, Baroness Neville-Jones, a former chair of the Joint Intelligence Committee, rejects the charge that they were at all reckless in attracting Chinese investment.
I would say two things about that. I mean, certainly, I think it's probably more George Osborne who was the driver of the relationship with the Chinese. I don't think he neglected security, and of course it was the Cameron government that put in the control mechanism on Huawei. And it's also the government that has introduced these national security criteria for inward investment. We've previously and historically been worried about what we exported to unreliable places. Now we have to be worried about unreliable places investing in us.
The control mechanism that the government put on Huawei is called the Huawei Cybersecurity Evaluation Centre, which is overseen by UK security officials, including GCHQ. Its report last year said the Oversight Board can provide only limited assurance that all risks to UK national security from Huawei's involvement in the UK's critical networks have been sufficiently mitigated. Reports this week in the Telegraph newspaper quote security sources saying that this year's report from the Oversight Board will be even more critical of Huawei, saying that all previous concerns have yet to be addressed.
David Grossman. Well, I'm joined now by Huawei's Vice President for Western Europe, Tim Watkins. Thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thanks for giving me the opportunity to put a few facts on the table.
Oh, well, the facts are these. The US, Australia and New Zealand have banned Huawei. Norway and Germany are considering their position, with Angela Merkel saying it's a possible cybersecurity threat. Britain's considering a position. Are they all wrong?
Well, we think they are all wrong. And the British government gave us the opportunity 8 years ago to work with them and put this HCSEC in place, the Cybersecurity Evaluation Centre. And in the 8 years, GCHQ have found nothing. So that was also contained in the report.
But you have a situation where the latest National Cybersecurity Centre report only gives limited assurances. So you haven't got a clean bill of health.
They've made that comment, but clearly there are always rooms for improvement, and they've highlighted a number of areas where we can improve. Every piece of software in the land has opportunities, they have vulnerabilities, and they have opportunities to improve. So, for sure, we've worked very closely.
Where do you have to improve?
Pardon?
Where do you have to improve?
Well, they've been quite specific in certain areas, and in terms of the rigour of the way our software is configured. And actually, we agree with them. They've made some very valid comments that in the modern world, as networks become virtualised and cloud-based, we can improve. And we've committed now $2 billion going forward to make those improvements.
But laws effective in China in June 2017 gave the authorities sweeping powers to monitor and investigate foreign and domestic individuals and institutions, and President Xi Jinping is tightening his grip.
Well, Huawei's response to that is we would never, ever harm individuals or other countries. In fact, Mr. Ren, the founder, made a comment that if he was asked to do that or even attempted to be forced to do that, which he firmly believes he never would be, he would firmly deny them that opportunity, and he would actually shut the company down if he was forced into doing so.
I'm going to read you a couple of articles from that law of 2017. Article 12. National intelligence work institutions may, according to relevant state regulations, establish cooperative relationships with relevant individuals and organisations and commission them to carry out related work. Article 14. National intelligence work institutions, when carrying out intelligence work according to laws, may ask relevant institutions, organisations and citizens to provide necessary support, assistance and cooperation. You're one of China's biggest companies. It's perfectly possible you'll be asked and will have to ask relevant institutions for support, assistance and cooperation.
No, Huawei is a private company. It's quite unique in China. We're not state-owned. The employees, some 90,000 of the 180,000 employees of Huawei, own the business.
Even though you're not state-owned, you come under the country's laws. Well, Articles 12 and 14 are quite specific.
All countries have laws, and all countries mandate that they must not hurt the state. And of course, we would never, ever hurt any other individual or company or country if we were attempted to be forced into that.
There's evidence of the Chinese state's deep involvement. You know, they retaliated after Canada's arrest of Huawei's CFO. And they retaliated by arresting Canadian nationals in China too, and then upscaling an existing prisoner to the death sentence.
Well, I'm not here to talk about China and their policies. I'm here to talk about Huawei and our position in the world market.
But that was how they retaliated. The Chinese state retaliated when Huawei's chief financial officer was arrested in Canada.
Well, as I say, I don't see it that way, that there was a retaliation. Of course, we would condemn
the Chinese state for doing that.
If there is any wrongdoing of Canadians or Chinese, of course, we must condemn it.
So do you condemn the Chinese state for, in retaliation, arresting 2 Canadians and putting them in jail after Huawei's CFO was arrested in Canada?
Well, I can't honestly see that. If that was a political move, that's not what I've come to talk about. I can talk about Huawei.
But it's related
and
to
our
Huawei.
Positioning. Well, we don't think it was related to Huawei.
So, but just can you imagine the CFO, for example, of something like British Airways, arrested in Canada for corporate wrongdoing? Can you imagine the British government then goes ahead and arrests 2 Canadian nationals in Britain and throws them in jail? It would be impossible.
We cannot really imagine that our CFO has been arrested anyway, in the way that she was.
But if she has been arrested and there is an ongoing investigation, presumably then you wouldn't want any involvement in the Chinese state because it compromises Huawei.
Well, as I say to you, we're not involved in the political side at all. All we're trying to do is deliver world-class networks to world-class carriers around the world. And we've done that for thousands of carriers. About 3 billion customers, 3 billion individuals around the world are using Huawei. In the 18 years that we've been operating in the UK, not one single incident has occurred.
So do you think there's some kind of xenophobia here?
Well, I think there is we're in the middle of a political crisis for sure. There are trade discussions going on, and all we're trying to do is prove that our equipment is safe and and absolutely ready to be used in any country around the world.
The fundamental problem is with that passing of that law in 2017, Huawei, as a Chinese company, whether it's owned by the workers or whoever it's owned by, comes under Chinese state laws. And if you are required to cooperate with President Xi Jinping over an investigation to hand over material in Chinese law, you would have to do that. And
Well,
that is the sticking point.
That's actually not the case. And if you care to read, there's a letter been posted on the government's website in response to Sir Norman's inquiries of us. And we have taken very serious legal advice from some world-class legal entities, and they have laid out in that letter what our obligations are. And actually what you're saying is not quite true.
So what do you think Britain's position is going to be? Are you confident that Britain's going to come round?
Oh, I do believe so. I mean, Huawei has been
But
open
America
and
won't.
honest. I think America has always been difficult for us.
Australia, New Zealand?
Australia, we have most of the carriers in Australia, the Vodafone and Optus and others are all using Huawei equipment very safely and have done for many, many years. I actually think in the end this will come round. I believe our open discussion with the British government and GCHQ, NCSC will come out and they'll realise that we are determined to develop our software in conjunction with them so that they're happy with us as they have been for the last 10 years. And we'll continue happily ever after.
Tim, thank you very much. Tim Watkins there.